This is just a brief follow-up to yesterday's upload about the king in the fields. Already got a couple hundred views, gotten some nice feedback. As we already discussed yesterday, the screenshot of just the bottom line, the point about the king's visit in 1797, has definitely seemed to have made its way around a large number of people. Many of them probably haven't heard where it's come from or heard about the recording. So if you happen to be part of a conversation where this screenshot made its way, and you know of this recording, the previous recording, of course, I'd appreciate if you'd share it. At any rate, I wanted to follow up on a number of points, and in particular, one point that was brought to my attention. Sort of in general, always considered, usually when you put in an hour, 2-3 hours, but you hope that it's complete and comprehensive, but there's always something that gets missed, or something that gets clarified afterwards, or maybe something that wasn't stated as clearly as it could have been, you realize upon re-listening, re-watching. So I've always considered whether it's worth doing a follow-up. But in this case, because of a specific order that I received from more than one person, I figure that it's worth doing the follow-up. So last night, one of the people listening pointed out to me that I was addressing the Indian of the king's appearance. I mentioned that there's a mashpia from Eretz Yisrael who describes the king as seemingly totally not showing up in royal garb, in royal appearance, with an entourage, and I stated this is clearly an incorrect understanding of the mashal, and went on to explain the mashal as I understand it. So it's been pointed out that there actually are a number of places in the Rebbe's Torah where the Rebbe seems to say something like this. So the person who reached out sent me a page from one of the Mamarim Mugav Nila Doidi, Tafshin Chavav, in Ara 25. It says, בפרט על ידי ההסברנוס, שכוונת המלך ברידוס לסוד היא, בכדי שגם אנשי הסוד יוכלו להקביל אספניו. And here's the key phrase, ובשביל זה הוא מוותר על גילוי כסר מלכוסוי ולבושי מלכוסוי. For this purpose, he's mevater, he gives up, he's willing to forgo being revealed, appearing to them in his crown, his royal crown, and in his royal garb, his royal robes. And that's all part of the kavana, etc., etc. So that's one place. Someone today posted on the chat for the shiurim, the recordings, the uploads. So we do have a dedicated chat, and as of now, it's an open chat. People are able to post and comment on topic. So someone sent from another mimer, probably also Nila Derdi, Kuntris Veshchedesh El Tafshinun. It says there, Ikar Agil de Malach Yafia Techzan Einachu Behechel Malchusoi, Kshehu Bevushi Malchus, Bekeser Malchus, Masha Enkein, Kshehu Besada. So when he's in his royal Hechel, in his royal room, etc., so he's wearing the royal clothes and the royal crown, Masha Enkein in the field. And once you search, you'll find that there are probably other memoirs, definitely a bunch of sikhs, definitely a theme that I've mentioned a number of times, that in Heichel Malchusay the king has the Keser Malchus and the Levush Malchus, and when he's in the field he does not. So l'chayre, this is the marker for what the Mashpia said, and so what am I saying? So my response to that is, first of all, appreciate the artists. We appreciate that we have knowledgeable people that are listening and are able to come up with good artists, good sources that challenge what's being said. It's something we definitely appreciate. But if we consider what the Rebbe is saying versus how the Mashpia understood it, we will realize that there still is a gap, and through a historical understanding, through a historical lens, we can understand what the Rebbe is saying and how that fits in with what we were saying here previously. Because that's actually a good question historically, which we didn't get into directly, which is when the kings traveled on these trips, how did they dress? What were they wearing? Were they sitting in their chariot, in their royal carriage, wearing the royal crown and robes? What in fact is the protocol in the royal courts, especially back then? What did they wear and when and where? These are all basic historical questions that we probably need to know the answer to in order to appreciate what the Rebbe is saying. So if you look into it, it turns out that, of course, the kings did not sit in their carriage traveling for hours wearing the royal crown and the royal robes. I didn't investigate too deeply into how often they did wear them, even in their palace. Presumably, even in their palace, they didn't wear it to breakfast, lunch, and supper, but probably just to specific formal settings. And it seems like over time, throughout the 1800s to the early 1900s, it seems like kings in general reduced the amount of time that they tended to wear these types of clothes and garb. So if you actually see pictures of kings from Russia, from Germany, etc., from the late 1800s, early 1900s, you'll see they're almost never wearing a crown and robes. Adarabah, that's the minority, that's the miut of pictures. And when it comes to royal portraits of kings before, it would be interesting to check what the ratio is. And even there, it's not a raya, because the portrait could perhaps be bedafka when they're wearing the crown and the robes, but that doesn't tell you how often they're actually wearing it. So that's also something you have to have some knowledge about and consider and understand in order to have an intelligent conversation about this. So it turns out, we're speaking yesterday about Katerina and Pavel, Catherine and Paul. So there's actually a painting, a portrait of Catherine, and the portrait in Russian is called Portrait of Catherine in her travel suit. So specifically referring to what she wore while traveling. And in fact, in the portrait, she's not wearing her crown and she's not wearing her formal royal robes, but instead she's wearing some kind of other formal outfit. It seems to have elements of a military outfit too. It looks like it has medals on it. I didn't investigate it too deeply. Obviously, not every prat is super important and super negaya. And as like I said to someone, I was in touch with someone today about the topic. I said, I'm not coming to say that you can make a Birchas HaTorah when you come to study and discuss the exact pratim of what the Seder was, the Sidrei HaMelucha were in Russia. And I'm okay with that, but I do believe that there are a lot of facts, basic ideas that are needed, that are necessary in order to then have a basic understanding of what the Torah is saying. So whatever the gather is, al pi Torah, al pi halacha, whether it has a gather of Torah, that's not our concern here, but I still think the information is important. And again, so yeah, it's very clear that they did not wear their crown and robes stamazai while traveling. Maybe they kept it in the carriage while they were traveling, and maybe if they entered the city at some point, maybe they put it back on, depending on where they are appearing, etc., etc. But yeah, obviously, especially if they're still in the Sada, they're not wearing their royal crown and royal robes, but that's Gufa, as we emphasized yesterday, that Gufa is part of the Sidrei HaMelucha. That when they appear in certain settings, they appear one way, and when they appear in other settings, they appear another way. And taka, when they're traveling, it's a bit more casual, and they act a bit more warm and benevolent. And that goes along with the clothing. And Vaita, like I said yesterday, the Rebbe was still born into that reality. So Vaita, this could be saying something that's Davar Pashut to someone from that background, from that environment. Would have been a Davar Pashut that kings, when they appeared in these settings, were not wearing their kesem machos and levush machos. But the way the mashpia read it and understood it and interpreted it, he added, they don't come with their entourage. It's like the king is, like I said, just picnicking in the field. That is no mashmas. As far as I saw, the Rebbe only ever makes this point that they're not wearing the kesem machos and the levush machos. And in one of the sikhs, the way the Rebbe expresses it is that when they're out in the field, they're not appearing with their full glory. And in parentheses, it adds azoy or in the Hebrew, kol kach. Meaning, of course, they're still appearing as king. They're showing up as king. They're not traveling incognito. There are stories about kings showing up incognito. That's not what we're talking about here. The king is on official travels, an official business. And so, as we explained, this is all part of the starim of the king, of the melucha, and everything has its rules, is governed by its rules and its rituals, etc. Akadekach, that, as we said from the letter of the Frierdiker Rebbe about the Tzemach Tzedek, that we can see how the villagers, when the Tzemach Tzedek traveled through, repeated and emulated and imitated and did the exact same sdarim that they clearly knew from the king. And you can go through prat by prat. You look up each prat in the description of the Frierdiker Rebbe's letter. And like I said yesterday, the letter is a little hard to follow. It says ir, kfar, in the ear, out of it. It's a little hard. It also sort of feels like it's almost like restarting itself. So you have to read the letter carefully to understand what exactly the exact seder was, because it's probably interesting and is negaya. But at any rate, it's pretty clear that it's all outside of Lubavitch. some of it seems to be taking place in a kfar. So on the way to the kfar outside Lubavitch, in the kfar outside Lubavitch, between the kfar and Lubavitch, maybe there are 3 steps there. But it's a highly choreographed ritual of greeting the tzaddik, and it's very clear that it's emulating the seder with the king. By the way, one of the pratim there is that the non-Jews appeared before the Tzemach Tzedek with a ceremony of the bread with the salt, which is a Russian ceremony. And in return, the Tzemach Tzedek gave them a donation of whatever number, 20, 30, whatever the number was of rubles for their town, for their needs, which is also mamish, something that we find with regard to the Russian czars, that they'd show up, they'd give a donation. So that letter of the Frierdiker Rebbe, of the Frierdiker Rebbe about the Tzemach Tzedek is mamish unbelievable mocker, because Shita Seinu, Zecher Yikavika Birchas HaTorah, on a letter of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So if you want to learn about the Siddur HaMelucha, you could learn it from the Frierdiker Rebbe. So there's the mashal, the nimshal, you have the king, you have the tzaddik, you have the Eibishter. So when we say the king is not wearing his Keser Malchus and Levush Malchus, that gufa is part of the Siddur HaMelucha, the Seder of his travels and how he appears during those travels. I don't think we have a portrait of Pavel specifically in his travel suit. It happens to be Katerina we have. That's going earlier back when she probably wore her royal garments more. And so that's, by the way, like I said, whether or not there's an Indian to follow the King of England and what goes on there, so I'm not saying there's an Indian Baruch Nias, but if you're trying to understand, trying to have a Havana in the Yanim of Melucha, there is a lot that can still be learned and gleaned from there. And Adiyam Azeh, the King of England, well, used to be the Queen, now it's the King, they wear the Big Day Melucha, the crown and the robes, when they are coronated, but also once a year at the beginning, or on average, once a year at the opening of the parliament. Also a whole ritual, and the king shows up, Big Day Malchus with the crown, a whole seder. Maybe whether it's a mashal that's meduyak or not, but maybe the opening of the parliament could be a shtickle mashal for the Hachdar of Rosh Hashanah. Ich weiß nicht. I'm not here to say anything with certainty, but there is information that could be gleaned there. Like I said, their minhagim have not changed. A lot of their minhagim have not changed already for a few hundred years. So some of their minhagim go back to when kings were still the norm. And on the other hand, their reforms that weakened the power of the king also go back a few hundred years, which is why, like I said, it seems like they were spared the revolutions of the other lands. So it's a very unique situation, very unique matzah, where you have this uninterrupted tradition of melucha, where on the one hand you don't have the aspect of the melech, of the absolute rule, the rule of monarchy, but you have a lot of the chitzonius, the sidrei ginunei hamelucha, are still mekuyim to some extent. So that could also be helpful. So that's what I would like to say with regard to that point. So yes, the Rebbe does say this, and yes, that also stems perfectly with what we know about the Metzias, but it's important to understand the context for what that detail means as well, and to understand how that fits into the history and context for the mashal, and therefore how that translates into the nimshal. Another Indian of the Rebbe that someone called to my attention is the Nakuda about the Alter Rebbe's mashal versus the other similar mashalim. And even after I put out the video and after I posted that the video addresses this point, lots and lots of people keep on sending me. It seems to be a very bewusst zach. What do you mean? The mashal existed before the Alter Rebbe? So I say, yeah, look, listen to what I said. I think I explained it nicely. Someone sent me an interesting mucker that either I hadn't known or I'd forgotten. That someone actually wrote to the Rebbe about this in Tafshim Mem Hey. I think it's Tzvi Meir Steinmetz wrote to the Rebbe pointing out that there's the Kazhin Tzemagid writes this mashal b'shem the Baal Shem Tov about either Bein HaBetzarim or Zman HaGolus, and there's actually a minor from the Rebbe, very interesting detail. So I don't think it really affects our presentation here, but it's certainly worth sharing and is of interest. So the Rebbe said, let me try to pull it up. The Rebbe said on the general being mitzayin to this, the Rebbe wrote Petach Tach al Hamar Makom v'chulu, and then more specifically the Rebbe wrote Harei Dafka Bizman, and the Rebbe circled the words Katziper Neided as a lashon about the Zman of Bein HaMetzarim. So Hainu Bein HaMetzarim Hapech the Sefer Ponim Yafas v'chulu l'chayre. So the Rebbe is pointing out that Hayos the Mashal is about Bein HaMitzrayim, not about Elul, which we know is one of the differences. Memela, so Skumto is that Pratei HaMashal, Pratei HaNimshal can't be the same. The Rebbe points out to the detail of Sefer Panim Yafis. So first of all, we do see that the Rebbe also is seeking to be mechalik and say that it's not exactly the same mashal. And then we can say that what we added, what we said, is continuing in the same kav and elaborating even further to explain how it's taka hagufa. Why is that a mashal for Bein HaMitzrayim, and why is there no Sefer Panim Yafis? Because it's not mamish the seder, not the official seder, the way the Alter Rebbe is explaining it here. Mashenkin here is a very specific inyan, a very specific seder. And like I explained, there it doesn't sound like the king is revealing himself formally as part of the Seder. It's more like you're catching the king somewhere where he's off instead of on, as opposed to here where the king is very much on. This is part of the Seder. It's just a different Seder than the usual Seder. So I think that fits, and like I said, it continues in the kav of the Rebbe's response. But everyone can take it however they want. So that was a second point that I wanted to share, another thing from the Rebbe. Of course, if anyone has anything else that's interesting or relevant, we're always happy to hear. And additionally, we had some ha'aris people sent in that, based on the way we explained it, based on this mahalach, there were additional points in the Maimon of the Torah that they felt became clearer to them. But okay, I think we'll leave this recording at the amount of time that we've already covered. But if you have anyone else has any other ha'aris or any other such points that they feel are clearer, more geschmack, as a result of looking at it with this information through this lens, I am of course happy to hear. You can track me down if you don't have my number. I'm sure you can find me and track me down, and we're open and interested in hearing any positive or constructive feedback.